Hey Joe, little presentation here on what I've done on one of our job sites with context capture and photogrammetry. So I did about 4 drone flights. I'm going to show you 2 of them here. And, my hope initially was to um, do a topo from the photogrammetry and then tie that into the CAD to kind of do that overlay and pull it into CAD. So um, I'm going to end up kind of taking a little spin on this, but just a little background in that. Just a couple of these missions that I did, I ran in context capture and actually ran a variety of different files. So I did an XYZ coordinate DSM, which I found my one of the CAD software programs I use called Chief Architect will actually allow you to import an XYZ data set. It's basically a CSV file of sorts, and man, it was pulling it in. It was trying to pull it in, but literally I gave up after a couple of hours, and it crashed my CAD program several times this week trying to pull in that DSM XYZ. So I also pulled in an STL or generated an STL from it. Um, and the STL file is a 3D kind of universal. Unfortunately, my CAD program will bring in an STL 3D, but Chief Architect will only create it as an object, as if you were using it like a piece of furniture or something. So I successfully pulled it in as an STL file. Unfortunately, I couldn't marry it to the site and to the 3D of the house plan. So I don't use AutoCAD a whole lot. I think I had mentioned to you before I was working with a young man who's architecture master student who's doing some CAD work for me to see if he could pull it into CAD, but the files are just too damn big, and the we both ended up running out of time this week. But pretty interesting that these different formats can be generated. I wish it was a little more straightforward, and maybe that's something we can play around with in spare time over the summer with the Bentley folks. Um, so I wanted to just kind of take a step back here. This is a project site. Actually, it's 2 lots here, and this was the flight that I did before we cleared the site. We're actually building a house on this piece of property. To give you some context, this is an aerial view of the site as we started clearing. So it's an interior lot um, in a Lake Kiwi community that's a Salem address, but closer to Seneca um, than Kiwi Key community. So again, not 3D, but this is a drone shot that I did during a mission to do the map of the site while we were clearing it. And we decided to clear both lots at the same time because we're actually going to be marketing a house to be built on this site and building a house for our sales rep on this site for her and her husband. It's going to be a model home for us. So anyhow, this just gives you an idea of kind of the site from bird's eye view that was after the initial drone flyover was done here. But again, my hope was to create a 3D of this that I could pull into CAD. But even with this, I think it's very visible what an opportunity this can be from a client perspective to help a client understand the topography of their site. So as you can probably see, this site falls off to the rear and slopes off to the back where we're going to build the house. And you can see, obviously, we were just getting started, so we hadn't cleared. So this site was pretty open, regardless. That could give us some meaningful topography from the 3D if we could get it into CAD. So one thing you might notice as I'm zooming in on this, again, my focus of this presentation is to look at this as a tool for um, helping a customer understand how the house is going to fit on the site. You can see where we've painted out the perimeter of the house on the site here. We actually had the surveyor come out and stake it. This is the garage. So it's a side entry garage. And a couple of other features, a little inset back porch. And overall, you get a pretty good view of what this house will look like in terms of the footprint when it sits on the site. So obviously, before we've cleared some challenges getting into the canopy and taking a look at how the topography lays, but still fairly useful to see, even for a client, to get a feel for how the slope falls off here. And just as an FYI, there was about 8 feet of fall from back left corner to front right garage corner. And what we ended up doing as we cleared and excavated, this house is going to be on a crawl space. Would have been a good basement lot, but crawl space, and going to have some storage in this lower left, and it's going to be a conditioned crawl space, so encapsulated in condition. So it would have been very helpful for me to show my client this as a sales tool during the initial site evaluation process, just to give them a good idea of how much fall there would be from the road over here, and to give them a better perspective. But even this type model, I think, would be impressive and would have some impact on the the level of trust and confidence that a client had in a builder, being able to show them even this before the site is cleared, to give them an idea of how their house is going to sit on site. So I'm going to move to the second shot, and I cut this down so it wasn't so big. But this is the site, the half of the site that we're building on. You can see the house right here to the right in this pre-clear and excavation shot. And then you can see here the same house there over to the right in this post-clearing and excavation shot. So I think there's also some value to kind of progress images, and I wonder, if this is something that could be shared in some sort of viewer with a client who's long distance. I don't know. But as we kind of get in here, you can see that same footprint of the house that we've excavated here. This is the garage, obviously not excavated. And this is where the crawl space will be. This is the storage area under the rear left that we cut down a little farther. And then we built up this back so we have a little less than 8 feet of fall across the site. So again, comparing the two, this is the overhead before excavation, and this is the overhead after. We've got some good points in here that could be control points, with the survey data that I have. It's just a matter of getting it into the CAD software. But as you can tell, kind of looking from the side now, a couple of things that are unique to be able to show a client and use this as a sales tool. This will be a zero-step garage, so there'll be no steps into the house, which is typically what we do on all of our foundations, whether it's a slab or a crawl or a basement. And so we tend to, even when we do a crawl space, excavate our crawl space so we can get a zero-step entry. You can also see how we, kind of dropped grade to manage water around the front. The house will sit up probably 18 inches to 2 feet above this cut. Ended up with some good boulders out of that too. And just a pretty cool view of this site overall. I guess one question I have as a curiosity to explore is, again, is there a viewer that consumers could download and I could send them a 3D file of the site? This would be really powerful for folks that we're building for who are out of town and want to see the progress. So being able to go through that's pretty awesome. And then one of the other aspects I'll just point out to you, since we were just talking about green building today, all the trees that came off this site are right here in this pile of wood chips. You can see we've used those wood chips for the mud control on the entrance, and we always recycle our trees when we can, when it makes sense. So again, we went from here, right, this view, no lake behind it, to this view, sorry, here, a little bit of lake behind it. So this view to this view, and then down and dirty into the crawl. So, hopefully you can find 5 points out of 30 to give me. Not what I was hoping for, but definitely a great illustration of how this technology can be used as a sales tool and even a project review tool. As we all know, like it's being used in the commercial realm, but is non-existent as far as I'm aware in the residential area. Thanks a bunch. Have a good night, and talk to you soon.